Alrighty, so we are in the middle of our book here. We're on, the beginning of our book, I guess you could say. We're on page 17 at the bottom, and we are looking at the concept of what's called the intuitive-based argument or intuitive theism, promiscuous teleology, just the science that proves that man has a propensity to believe in, search for, long for a God. And that we can find, as we'll look at toward the end of this chapter, don't know if we'll get there this morning, that God set it up that way. And the Bible actually gives us an understanding that we are built to seek him out. And we can see that throughout Scripture. One example, by the way, before we get into the reading, that we can understand that is Matthew chapter 5 and verse 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. So there is a recognition based upon this verse that man is seeking, searching, longing for fulfillment. Something is lacking. Something is empty. There is a void. There is a aspect to our lives that's missing. And as hard as we try to fill it with all the material opportunities and channels that are before us, as the book of Ecclesiastes shows us, we still find ourselves and wind up empty, vain. But God says, guess what? There is a way that we can be filled. There is an avenue. There is an outlet. There is a lifestyle that brings true eternal fulfillment. You think about, again, Ephesians 1 and verse 3, all spiritual blessings are in Christ. So with that kind of in view and kind of where we're at, let's continue to go through. A lot of this, again, is their argumentation. That's what we're really establishing, is their logic. And that establishment then allows us to correctly break it down and dissect it based upon evidence in a critical way. So let's go ahead and start reading there at the bottom of page 17. If someone could read starting there and then go ahead and read for me through the middle of page 18 at the end of that paragraph.
According to naturalistic atheistic assumptions for the origin of the universe and the evolutionary assumptions for the origin of mankind, everything that exists must have a naturalistic cause. By that, it is understood the atheistic evolutionists must present a reason to explain why humans are intuitive theists. That corresponds with their atheist beliefs that the material universe is all there is. The problem that the atheistic community runs into in this regard is that the ideas of religion and theism, when countered to what one would expect to find with atheism and naturalistic evolution, were true. According to evolution, by this we mean atheistic naturalistic evolution, in which no intelligent designer played any part. Natural selection eliminates physical structures and mental states that are costly in terms of their survival value. For instance, if they're developed in a certain subgroup of humans, the intuitive idea that rabid Kodiak bears make good pets, that group would soon be killed by such bears, and whatever aspects of the brain that house the belief would be eliminated from the human population as a whole. To illustrate further, a certain group of humans tended to spend lots of efforts on religious ceremonies that had nothing to do with their physical survival, and another group did not waste their resources on anything but their physical survival. Evolutionists would argue that natural selection would suggest that those religious people who wasted their resources would eventually lose out in the race for physical survival, and the non-religious group would be selected by nature to become more prevalent and replace the wasteful religious group. Yet we see just the opposite.
And so they're in a bind, and they know they're in a bind, and so they try to explain this, and we're going to look at it here in just a second. But if you take the natural selection approach that they all ascribe to, then the wastefulness of religion and the vanity and uselessness of it, as they would describe and define, would eventually just not exist within mankind, because natural selection would vet it out and it would cease to exist. But as Kyle is pointing out, just the opposite is what's happening throughout history, throughout all cultures, throughout time. Man, as a people, has sought after and pursued God. Not correctly necessarily, but has been inclined to pursue God. And so how are they going to explain this? Well, they do try to. So let's look here at the bottom of page 18. Richard Dawkins acknowledged this problem facing atheistic ideas. He stated, religion is so wasteful, so extravagant, and Darwin's selection habitually targets and eliminates waste. The late atheistic philosopher Daniel Dennett stated, whatever else religion is as a human phenomenon, it is a hugely costly endeavor, and evolutionary biology shows that nothing so costly just happens. What do these atheistic writers mean when they say religion is wasteful and so costly? Dennett expounded on the idea when he said that when people look at humanity all over the world, what they see today is a population over 6 billion people, almost all of whom devote a significant fraction of their time and energy to some sort of religious activity. Rituals such as daily prayer, both public and private, or frequent attendance at ceremonies, but also costly sacrifices, not working on certain days, no matter what looming crisis needs prompt attention, and abiding by a host of strenuous, observed prohibitions and requirements. Dawkins expanded his idea of wasteful as well when he said, religion can endanger the life of the pious individual as well as the lives of others. Thousands of people have been tortured for their loyalty to a religion, persecuted by zealots for what is in many cases a scarcely distinguishable alternative faith. Devout people have died for their gods and killed for them, whipped blood from their backs, sworn themselves to a lifetime of celibacy or to a lonely silence, all in the service of religion. What is it all for? What is the benefit? In their discussions and writings, atheists have sometimes suggested that religion possibly has such overwhelming health benefits that it is, quote, worth the expense. They note that such things as the result of some research to suggest that prayer can lower stress levels or blood pressure, or they comment on the emotional benefits of fitting into a community which religious rituals would foster and encourage. Virtually across the board, however, they have rejected the idea that religion is actually beneficial for the physical survival of mankind. They contend that such minor advantages as low stress levels or low blood pressure certainly cannot justify the massive expenditure of resources on religion. Note, it is easy to see why they have rejected those explanations. If religion actually provides benefits that would be greater than any negative consequences, then it would be better for humanity to hang on to religious ideas, regardless of their factuality or validity. Since most modern atheists are calling for the eradication of religion, they are forced to downplay its benefits and look for another answer that could compel people to want to eliminate religion. While we certainly are not supporting the idea that since religion is beneficial, that is why it, quote, evolved, it is plain to see why the current atheistic community has forsaken it. Sam Harris contended, and even if tribes have occasionally been the vehicles of natural selection and religious proved adaptive, it would remain an open question whether religion increases human fitness today. The current atheistic consensus is that religion does not bestow upon humanity enough physical benefit to increase human fitness. How then do atheists respond to the two facts that, one, humans are intuitively theistic, and two, such religious theism is extremely costly and does not bestow physical survival fitness on our species? And so that's on them to describe and answer and explain based on their stance. So they're going to try to do this. If someone could read for me there, the current atheistic answer, religion is a virus or a byproduct. And if you can just read that whole section, it ends at the top of page 22.
What naturalistic explanation can be given to account for the ubiquitous and extremely costly nature of religion? In their attempt to show that theism is unnecessary and ultimately harmful, the atheistic community has concocted the idea that theistic ideas are analogous to mind viruses that infect a person, not for the benefit of a person, but for the benefit of the mind virus. In other words, theism is a mind virus that has been passed from human host to human host for its own survival and not for the benefit of the human organism it inhabits. Dawkins explained the fact that religion is ubiquitous probably means that it has worked to the benefit of something, but it may not be us or our genes. It may be to the benefit of only the religious ideas themselves, to the extent that they behave in some gene-like way as replicators. Dawson has expounded upon the idea and used the term memes to describe ideas that he asserts behave in ways similar to genes. He contends that theism is a meme, and actually as a mental virus, infecting people and forcing them to replicate the meme by teaching others about it and expending vast resources on it. Along these lines, Dennett has suggested that the common cold is universal to all human peoples in much the same way as religion is, yet we would not want to suggest that colds benefit us. Dennett, using the meme idea, asserted the meme theory accounts for this. According to this theory, the ultimate beneficiaries of religious adaptations are the memes themselves. Atheist Daniel Ray wrote an entire book, The God Virus, How Religion Affects Our Lives and Culture, based on this idea. He opened by saying, "It was not until Richard Dawkins' idea of viruses of the mind that we gained a ready-made way to examine religion as closely as we look at the epidemiology of the flu virus. This book will show how religions of all kinds fit in the natural world, how they function in our minds and culture, and how similar they are to the germs, parasites, and viruses that inhabit our bodies." To build this case for the religion as a virus idea, he mentions numerous things that he perceives as validating evidence of his assertion. He wrote, "Once a person has converted to a religion, it is difficult to have a rational conversation about the irrational aspects of his religion. It is as though something invaded the person and took over part of his personality." He went on to discuss the situation in which a friend lost his father to cancer. Before the loss, the friend was non-religious, but after the father's death, the friend got a severe case of religion that changed his personality dramatically. Ray says there's no way to have a conversation with him on any subject about religion without religion creeping in. He further asserted that stress can activate the chickenpox virus in adults, leading to a condition known as shingles. Similarly, stress tends to reactivate the God virus in many people. Other alleged symptoms of the God virus include the idea that religion always functions to ensure its own survival, just as the virus does. To undergird this assertion, Ray said, "Go into any Christian bookstore and you will find books about living in a secular world, living with a spouse who is not saved, or how to convert friends and relatives. The God virus is always concerned with protecting and expanding its territory. That is what these books are all about." Ray has taken Dawkins' meme mental virus idea to its logical conclusion.
All right, and so we're going to look at the response and how we think about this. You may already be trending in that direction, but to just summarize what they're saying, they're basically saying because of natural selection, which is the basis of their belief system is atheistic. Their belief system, there is no God, there cannot be a God, no matter what the evidence says. And so natural selection, Darwinism, atheism is the core of their belief system. So with that in view, they then say, well, how can we explain the fact that religion has always been around and that natural selection hasn't just eliminated it? Well, the only way that we can think to explain this is the same way that you would explain the common cold. It's a virus. And there's something going on in the natural world that is protecting its existence. And it is operating just as a virus would. So that's their explanation. So let's look at a very easy response to this explanation, which is shocking that this is the position they take, but it is, as you've seen, several books. By the way, these books are written by people who are extremely scholarly in the academic world, are extremely respected, are viewed as experts and top-notch, just renowned researchers. So this isn't just a bunch of nobodies. These are people that the academic world highly esteems. But let's look at a very easy response to this. If someone could read for me page 22, and then just down to the bottom there, that last paragraph that's finished on page 23.
One very simple idea clearly manifests the flaws of the God virus concept. If thoughts or ideas were self-sustaining, self-replicating beings that were simply out for their own survival, that would mean that the idea of atheism would fall under the same condemnation as a selfish mean, ensuring its own survival to the potential detriment of its host. By what criteria could anyone discern between real ideas and those dastardly means infecting the brain? If someone did propose a set of criteria, who is to say that such criteria are not themselves a menacing mean that is infecting the mind of the person trying to weed out means? And how would we know that the concept of a mean is not merely a mean in and of itself infecting the minds of atheists who present the idea? The reader can see how quickly such a discussion would digress into intellectual chaos. Furthermore, how could people be held responsible for anything they think or do? My means made me do it would become the mantra for all kinds of malicious crimes. And while atheists have attempted to provide answers to such problems, if means really do exist as individual entities, who is to say that such answers are more than means? In fact, when analyzing the writings of those who present the mean virus idea, the reader can quickly ascertain the flaw in their reasoning. For instance, Ray said that when the religious virus took over his friend after his father's death, the friend mentioned religion in virtually every conversation. But the same could be said for any number of individuals who have become outspoken atheists, who insist on inserting their unbelief in virtually every conversation they have. Ray stated, in viral terms, it means that people are so deeply infected that they are immune to influence and generally ignore any evidence that contradicts their beliefs. Yet it can be shown that the available scientific evidence contradicts major tenets of atheistic evolution, a fact that is generally ignored by the atheistic community. In addition, we mentioned that Ray said, go into any Christian bookstore and find books about living in a secular world, living with a spouse who is not saved, or how to convert friends and relatives. The God virus is always concerned with protecting and expanding its territory. That is what these books are all about. What, pray tell, are the books, tracts, DVDs, and pamphlets about atheism designed to do? Are they not written for the very purpose of protecting and expanding the territory of atheism?
All right, thank you, sister. If someone could read the bottom of page 23 through the end of this section, which is the bottom of page 24.
Listen to the atheists themselves as they describe their religious efforts. Prolific atheistic writer and debater Dan Barker likened his teaching about atheism to evangelism, and he stated, representing the Freedom from Religion Foundation, I get to engage in similar atheist missionizing all across the American continent. At one point, he said, atheist evangelism doesn't just happen in front of an audience. Notice the irony in the fact that the first chapter of Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, is titled A Deeply Religious Non-Believer. In that chapter, he quotes Carl Sagan's writings from a book titled A Pale Blue Dot. Sagan wrote, a religion, old or new, that stressed the magnificence of the universe as revealed by modern science might be able to draw forth reserves of reverence and awe hardly tapped by the conventional faiths. Dawkins then stated, all Sagan's books touch the nerve endings of transcendent wonder that religion has monopolized in past centuries. My own books have the same aspiration. Consequently, I hear myself often described as a deeply religious man. Additionally, Ray rails on religion as a destructive mean/virus, and yet throughout his book, he capitalizes the terms atheist and atheism consistently. One example is when he states, in fact, the only thing you can get some atheists to agree upon is that there is no God. It is not the religious concept that there is no God that could easily be put forth as the mean that has infected so many minds to the detriment of the post-human, and in spite of a vast amount of evidence to the contrary. Such is the double-edged sword of the mean/virus concept. If it cuts at all, which it does not, then it cuts both ways.
Okay, and so they're just making the point that if you're going to take the stance that religion is a virus, and that is what can explain its existence throughout history, you'd have to take the same stance regarding atheism, which the atheists would not agree to, because they would claim various reasoning and evidence, although misguided, to come to their conclusions, which the same is the case in our belief system. So it eliminates and negates this whole concept. That one's somewhat easy to kind of think through. So how do we then explain mankind throughout history in all stages, and this propensity, even in young children, to pursue God? What does the science state? The science states that is how man operates. We're going to see that in just a second. We've already looked at it, but we're going to go down a little further and be reminded. The science states that is exactly how man operates, a propensity to pursue after God. So why? Could his existence not be an explanation? The way he built us, could that not be an explanation? The atheist rejects that, but that is a great explanation. So let's look here. If someone could read 24, the bottom, and then all the way through 25, just that last paragraph there.
Up to this point, we've established that both atheists and theists admit that humans are intuitive theists. That is, the belief that an intelligent creator comes naturally to humans. This idea poses a serious problem for the atheists, because the concept of God and religion are extremely costly to the human species. Thus, in an attempt to explain why theism is so prevalent, they liken it to a mental virus that is out for its own survival and not for the benefit of the host organism. This explanation and others like it fail, since arguments used to dismiss the validity of theism and religion would be equally effective to demote all concepts, including atheism, to byproducts and means. Thus, we are forced to conclude, as Paul Copeland did, attempts by these new atheists to explain away theology as a useful fiction, or worse, a harmful delusion, fall short of telling us why the religious impulse is so deeply embedded. God exists, however, we have an excellent reason as to why religious fervor should exist. In other words, if there really is a God who is an intelligent, supernatural creator who loves mankind and desires that mankind should know the truth, what should we expect to see? We should expect to find humans pre-programmed for a belief in God. Of course, we would not expect all humans to come to the proper conclusion that God exists, since a loving God would equip humans with the capacity to choose what to believe and how they choose to behave. We would, however, expect God to have so designed humans that to dismiss concepts of creation and theism would be unnatural and would require some type of reverse program. That intelligence does not exist is the answer, which maintains the most powerful explanatory value. This argument for God's existence is sometimes referred to as the intuitive argument for the existence of God, or the sensus divinitatis, sense of the divine. It states that the natural human predisposition to believe in a creator provides evidence of that creator. In fact, further reading into the atheistic literature makes known the fact that atheism is unnatural in the sense that it is not how the human mind is designed to perceive the world. Let us refer back to the Bloom and Weisberg article titled Childhood Origins of Adult Resistance to Science. It is important to understand that their definition of the term science. Their research was done in order to show why many Americans reject atheistic evolution. Thus, the term science is equated with atheistic evolution in their writing. Understanding this to be the case, notice that they said the main reason why people resist certain scientific creed that atheistic evolutionary findings is that many of these findings are unnatural, and unintuitive. Kelman concurred when she wrote, "The implication is that children's science failures may in part result from inherent conflict between intuitive ideas and basic tenets of contemporary scientific atheistic evolutionary." In Dawkins' discussion of the situation, he includes the fact that Bloom says that humans are innately predisposed to be creationists. Dawkins then comments that natural selection makes no intuitive sense. Thus, he concludes that children are native teleologists and may never grow out.
Thank you, brother, so much. So it is unnatural. They're even concluding for a child to be an atheist. It's unnatural. It doesn't make sense. Their starting position is wrong because they say, again, as the article is entitled, childhood origins of adult resistance to science. Well, they're claiming that the science proves atheism. And so in their mind, well, this is unnatural. This doesn't make sense to children. This doesn't make sense to then adults who are predisposed to pursue God as children. And because of that, it's a rejection of science, but we can't explain it. We don't really understand how this happens. And they refuse to come back to the evidence that leads them to say, well, because God created man and man is therefore predisposed to pursue God. It just will not do it. So they're stuck. They don't have validity in the logical basis of their argumentation. It doesn't work. Yes, ma'am.
We have a 4-year-old granddaughter who we were talking about. She saw one of our books when they like Jesus is on that book board. And we were talking about Jesus in the manger and his mom and all this. She said, well, who was God's mom? And this whole week, 3-4 days we had her, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
What an interesting brain.
Yeah.
This child is processing. I'm gonna come up with a really good answer. She's gonna
Yeah.
you know, we had our children so they could train and talk
Yeah.
from birth.
Yeah.
She is exposed to such and such.
Yeah.
I'll get back to
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Because she's in a different world.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Different world of law, television,
Mhm.
radio, just a lot.
Yes, ma'am. That's right. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
Telling me this week, my sister was telling me this week, their daughter and son-in-law and 4 grandsons live up in Northern California. And they are teaching in school that you can be male or female. It doesn't matter what you were born as. And she said they have these things that they put in the rooms. It's a catwalk. In other words, anybody can go and do anything they want. And she said the oldest one, he just graduated or is graduating from high school, and he wants to go to college down in LA somewhere, down in the LA area. And so they're trying to check out and see if they're teaching that in the colleges even. She said, I just can't believe that they teach that in elementary schools. That you can, whatever you want to be. If you're born a man, you can be a woman, and if you're born a woman, you can be a man. That it's like a cat. You can go in the catwalks no matter what you are. And she said, that's just crazy. And I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
And she said that they're really worried about who going to college.
Yeah.
In LA area. They teach it in California schools.
Yes, there is an attack in these circles that it's an attack on real science, really. Yet they claim to be the ones that are so much more educated and so much more, quote, scientific. Yet in actuality, the very basics of their practice, science, clearly refutes what it is that they ascribe to and try to push and jam down people's throats And then regarding Sister Bess and just children, I mean, just the natural curiosity, the natural interest, the natural questioning and thought process. For children to contemplate and try to imagine and reason within their minds, trying to understand God. Incredible. And the scripture shows us that. Let's look here. I'll read this last paragraph, and then we're going to go through and spend some time in Romans 1 as well as Acts 17. But I'll read this last paragraph here on the bottom of page 26. Notice the admission by these atheistic writers. They are forced by the evidence to admit that humans are naturally inclined to believe in an intelligent designer. They are further forced by the evidence to conclude that the various tenets of atheistic evolution are counterintuitive and unnatural. Yet, in spite of the evidence, they cling to the idea that somehow this situation can be reconciled with the belief that God does not exist. Notice that a presumption of atheism could never have predicted the situation that humans would be intuitive theists. Nor do the purported atheistic answers to the problem provide adequate explanatory value. The simple and most powerfully supported conclusion is that God exists, and that is why humans are innately predisposed to be creationists. And so we'll go through here this last section, and if someone can go ahead and turn for me to Acts 17. Acts 17. And if someone could read 26 through 31 of Acts 17.
He has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwelling, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, for he is not far from each of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as also some of our own folks have said, for we are also his offspring. Therefore, since we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, something shaped by art and man's devising. Surely these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has appointed a day on which he will judge the world, because he has appointed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. He has given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. And when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, while others said, "We will hear you again on this." So Paul departed from among them. However, some men joined him and believed in him. One named Demarius.
That's good. So Paul in this discussion, remember he's talking about judgment here, describes man as being the offspring of God. So we are created in God's image. He describes the reality of us groping after him or feeling after him. And again, is making the case in view of that we have to face him in judgment. We're going to look at Romans 1 here in just a second. So can someone, which is connected to it, so can someone read for me just these first, I guess, 3 paragraphs on page 27. So the bottom there, proper conclusion.
Once God's existence is established using humanity's intuitive theism, the next step would be to see how God expects his creatures to use this pre-programmed disposition. If we can establish that the Bible is God's word, as we can, then we can go to it to determine the proper human response. First, we can see that God expects everyone to use this predisposition to accurately assess the evidence. He has provided to come to this conclusion that he exists. Romans 1:18 through 21 bears this out. For the wrath of God which is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Notice that the biblical text makes it clear that these men suppress the truth, even though what may be known of God is manifest in them. Furthermore, unbelievers will be without excuse because they are equipped with the evidence and the inherent predisposition and ability to arrive at the proper conclusion.
So it's very, very similar to Acts 17, if you think about it. I mean, this context here, Romans 1, 18 through 21, is saying that God is manifest in them, similar to Acts 17, 26 to 27, that we would grope after God, that we are his offspring. As it goes on to say later on in the Acts 17 passage. And being without excuse, Romans 1, 18 through 21, again, we are judged, Acts 17. So this idea that we're not capable, that we can't know, that we're unsure, it's the exact opposite. It's very easy to be capable and to know. The work comes in order to go search the evidence and reach proper conclusions. But society is doing everything it can, it seems, to try to, again, attack real science. So ignore all the natural inclinations of man, ignore what the science says regarding the inclinations and predispositions of man to pursue after God, and start with there cannot be a God. And that's where they miss it. Let's just see if we can read this last section here. Last paragraph all the way through 28.
In his sermon on Mars Hill to the Athenians, the Apostle Paul explained the Creator has made from one blood every nation, well on all the face of the earth, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope from him and find him. So he is not far from each of them. Acts 17, 26 to 27. Paul's statement corresponds perfectly to the idea that God has so designed humans that they naturally grope from him. This would also fit perfectly with the fact that many psychologists and anthropologists are led to believe that children, left entirely to their own devices, would invent some conception of God. Humans from birth are groping for God. Notice then the divine program for salvation. First, a person gropes for a creator. That person is able to find the creator who designed humans and instill within them the ability to know them. The knowledge of this creator should lead them to the conclusion that humans are his offspring, not the product of a naturalistic chance process. Acts 17:29. This truth was sufficiently verified by the life and death of Jesus Christ, who will ultimately judge all mankind based on the flintless evidence God has supplied, and their inherent ability to assess the evidence correctly.
Thank you very much, brother. Appreciate it. And God is eternal. There is no beginning with him. There was no origin with him. He has forever existed. And you might say, well, how can I even understand that? Well, that's what makes him God. And we are his offspring. We are created in his image. In other words, we have an eternal soul that we are accountable to God for. And so this discussion hopefully will further assist us and empower us regarding the challenges we face in today's time. Thank you all very much for the class and comments.